Hello dear students, in this video we are going to continue with the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is located below the brain at the base of the skull. So this is the pituitary gland. If you look at it, it is located below the hypothalamus. So this structure here, part of the brain, is called the hypothalamus, which can control the activities of the pituitary gland and other activities like the heartbeat and others. So this is the pituitary gland. It is called the master gland, or it is called the queen of all glands. Why? Because it can control the activities of most of the endocrine glands. So that is why we call it the master gland or the queen of the glands. So this is the pituitary gland. Let's look at it with better diagram here. If you look at the pituitary gland, it has two lobes. It has the posterior lobe and it has the anterior. So it has two lobes, the posterior and the anterior. And here at the hypothalamus we have group of neuroendocrine cells. So these are neurons, but they can secrete hormones, and these hormones are going to be released to the pituitary gland to control it or to be stored there. The hormones will be stored there. For example, here first group of neuroendocrine cells can produce two hormones, which are oxytocin and ADH, and store them at the anterior. So these two hormones will be stored at the anterior. Other groups in the hypothalamus of neuroendocrine cells can secrete hormones through blood to the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. This is called releasing hormones, and is going to stimulate this loop to produce and secrete its hormones, which we'll study them with details. So let's start with the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. So as we said, here we have the first group of neuroendocrine cells. They are going to produce two hormones, one vasopressin, or we call it ADH, and that is short for antidiuretic hormone. So it reduces the diuretic. So it is antidiuretic. It means it will make urination less. And the second hormone is oxytocin. Let's look at these two hormones. The first one, first of all, they are going to be secreted from the hypothalamus by neuroendocrine cells, and they are going to be stored in the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And these two hormones are, the first one, vasopressin, or we call it ADH. It stimulates the kidneys. So the kidney nephrons can reabsorb water and not release it with urine. So it helps the kidney nephrons to reabsorb water. If you do not drink water, or you are fasting, or you are at a place where there's no water, then the kidneys need to reabsorb the water and do not release it with urine, so your fluid of the body do not decrease and you face danger. So that is what we call a homeostasis of water. It regulates the level of water. How? By making the nephrons reabsorb water. Also, it stimulates the arteries. Why? To increase the blood pressure. If someone, this can be used also as a medicine. If someone is having low blood pressure, then they will give him vasopressin to increase its arterial blood pressure. So this is the first hormone, oxytocin. It is produced from the hypothalamus, secreted to the blood through the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Let's go to the second hormone. The second hormone is oxytocin. Oxytocin, it stimulates the uterus to make the contraction of muscles of the uterus during difficult labor. So it is used to make the throes of labor. Also, it can be used as medicine in difficult labor to make the throes of labor. Also, it stimulates the breast to do what? To release milk during suckling. When the baby sucks the mother's breast, then this hormone is going to be sent to the an impulse going to go to the hypothalamus, is going to produce this hormone. This hormone is going to go to the breast of the female to make the milk release, to release the milk. So these are the two hormones, and this is what they do. Let's go now to the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, and there is a hell of a party going on there. Let's look at the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. First, it receives from the hypothalamus releasing hormone, and this releasing hormone is going to stimulate the anterior lobe to stimulate it and to produce its hormones. And these hormones, let's look at them one by one. The first one is GH, or somatotropin hormone, somatotropic hormone. This is the growth hormone. So from the name growth hormone, what does it do? It stimulates growth. So it stimulates, or the target cells for this, or the target organs, are the muscles and bones of most of the body. What does it do? It regulates the process of growth, and it controls protein synthesis. Also, this hormone can increase the level of glucose in the blood, so it can help you in growth. The second hormone here we have FSH, or we call it follicle stimulating hormone. So what does it target? The target organs of this hormone are the ovaries in female and the testes in male. First of all, let's see what it does when it targets the ovaries of female. It helps in the development of follicles. And follicles, what do you mean by follicles? Let's look at the ovary. This is the ovary of the female. And if you look at it, here we have places or structures which will develop. In them, there are the eggs or the ovum. The ova or the eggs of the female are going to develop in these structures, which we call them follicle. So it stimulates the maturation of these, the development of these follicles, and help them to become Graafian follicle. So this is Graafian follicle, in which the egg will be mature. And male, when it stimulates the testes of male, now too, what does it do? It helps in the formation of seminiferous tubules. What do we mean by seminiferous tubules? Also, if you look at the male testes here, you'll find tubules. These tubules, if you look at them here, this is what is inside of the tubules. So the sperms are produced in these tubules, in the seminiferous tubules. What help the development or formation of these seminiferous tubule is FSH, and that is its job when it comes to the male. Let's go to the second hormone, which is LH. LH, or we call it luteinizing hormone. What does it do? Let's see. It stimulates the ovaries of the female to do what? Let's see. It helps in the maturation of the ova, the egg of the female. It helps in its maturation. So look here, this is the follicle. Inside of it there is an egg. LH helps in the maturation to make this secondary oocyte mature. So it helps in the maturation of the ova. 1. 2, it helps, or it stimulates ovulation. What do we mean by ovulation? If you look here, now this is the Graafian follicle. It releases the egg. Now suddenly in the day 14, this is the menstrual cycle. In the day 14, LH will increase highly in the day 14 of the menstrual cycle, and this will cause the release of the egg. So what causes the release of the egg out of the ovary so it can go to fallopian tube, then it can be fertilized? It is LH, so it helps in ovulation or stimulates ovulation. Also, after this Graafian follicle have released the egg, now it is empty. It will help, LH will help it to become corpus luteum. Do you look at this yellow body? This is what we call it, the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum now is going to be like a temporary gland which will produce hormones like progesterone and estrogen, which will help in the preparation of the uterus to hold this egg in case it is fertilized. So LH will help in the formation of the corpus luteum. So these were the functions or the jobs of LH. Now let's go to the second hormone. Here we have interstitial cells stimulating hormone. This it targets the testes in male, and what does it do? It helps the interstitial cells to secrete testosterone. Here, if you look at the seminiferous tubules, hair between them, that is what interstitial mean. It means the cells which are between two things. So these cells, which their name is Leydig cells, so these Leydig cells here, these are interstitial cells, will produce testosterone. So what will stimulate these cells to produce testosterone is this hormone ICSH, interstitial cell stimulating hormone, and this is what it does. Let's go to the second hormone. Here we have prolactin. Prolactin, it stimulates or it targets the mammary glands of the female. This is in the female's breast. There are glands which secrete or produce milk, and this prolactin, it targets the mammary gland in female breast. So what does it do? First of all, it helps in the development of mammary glands. It helps them to develop, and also it induces milk production. So it makes these glands produce milk. The first hormone, oxytocin. Now let's compare oxytocin and prolactin. Both stimulate the mammary glands of the female, but prolactin helps in the production. Oxytocin helps the milk to be released. When the baby sucks the mother breast, it will make the milk released out of the breast, but prolactin helps in the production. Oxytocin helps in the release of milk. So I hope this is clear. Let's go to the second hormone. Here we have hormone number 6, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So thyroid stimulating hormone, it targets the thyroid gland. So it targets the thyroid gland. It targets the thyroid gland and stimulates it to produce thyroxine. Now the thyroid gland produces thyroxine. Also it helps the thyroid gland to collect iodine. Why collects iodine? Because iodine is used to produce thyroxine with a percentage 65% of it, of thyroxine is iodine. That is why it targets the thyroid gland to collect iodine, so it can use it to produce thyroxine. So let's go to the second hormone. Here we have ACTH. This hormone is adrenocorticotropic hormone. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, it stimulates the cortex of adrenal gland. Now the adrenal gland, we know that it has two parts, the cortex and medulla. This hormone stimulates the cortex of the adrenal gland to produce its hormones. So it stimulates the cortex of adrenal gland to produce its hormones, which are the three groups which we studied: the glucocorticoid hormones, and the mineral hormones, and the salt hormones, salt and the 6 hormones. This hormone will go from the pituitary gland to the adrenal gland to stimulate its cortex to produce its hormones. Let's go to the second hormone. We have the last hormone here of the pituitary gland is MSH. MSH, melanin stimulating hormone. So it stimulates the skin, or it targets the skin to do what? To produce melanin. So if you look at the skin, it has this pigment melanin. If you look here, just look at this photo here. These parts which are not protected from the sun, when the sun hits them, the skin is going to produce melanin. Look at these places which were covered by the sunglasses. They do not have this pigment. But if you look here, these places, they are a little bit darker because the skin produce melanin here to cover them, so to protect them from the harmful rays of the sun, so you will not have cancer because of this harmful sun rays. Those were the hormones of the pituitary gland. I hope everything is clear. Until next video, ciao.